Hello, in this video demo we're going to be talking about WatchGuard Threat Detection and Response, Cybercon, Threat Sync, Policies, and Actions. The first thing to discuss is Cybercon, and this can be a very confusing concept for a lot of people new to TDR, but the best way to think of it is as your posture against potential threats. It is a proactive stance that allows you to enable different features and policies before an incident happens. So basically, in effect, Cybercon is a group of policies that you allow to take action. So the important thing to remember here is that Cybercon is something that you set before something happens. Threat Sync, on the other hand, is a dynamically and automatically generated score that is applied to anything that happens on your target machine. A file creation, a process creation, a new network connection, everything gets scored. And those scores are added together for an indicator that determines whether or not a specific policy will be affected. So let's take a look at this. So here I've created a new customer called Example Co, and I've logged in as my first user, Joe Demo, who's an administrator and operator. Now notice there's nothing in here. I have no indicators, no remediations, I have no active hosts. I have a bunch of empty licenses, and it's a completely blank slate out of the box. So before we proceed, I want you to notice right here, Cybercon level 5. This is the lowest Cybercon level, and no policies are associated with Cybercon level 5 by default. You can create custom policies that apply to Cybercon 5, but it's not recommended. This is the equivalent of putting your system into watch mode or monitor mode. We'll notice events, we'll alert on events, but we won't take any action on anything. Now, there are exceptions to that. You can manually take an action, and there is a process called host ransomware prevention that can be active outside of policies, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so let's look at our policies. You go to Configuration, Policy, and you see I already have 5 policies in here that are WatchGuard default policies to help get you started. The first thing to check is the policy rank. Policies are applied top down, so you want to pay attention to the rank. Next, you check the Cybercon level. Here we have a first policy that's set to apply to Cybercon 4 or anything higher. That means Cybercon 4, 3, 2, or 1 will take effect. Then you see the Threat Sync score. That's, again, that aggregated indicator score for a particular event or host that allows us to take action. Now we see the policies enabled or disabled. I have a couple at the bottom here that are disabled. These are new features that I'll touch on in a moment. So let's expand one of these and take a look. We have a policy type, remediation policy. That's the most common. A free-form name that allows you to just define an identifying name, and a comment block where you can add additional information. We set the Cybercon level and the Threat Sync score level. The next item is the group target for the policy. By default, our policies start out with all hosts as a group. That means it will be applied to anything that has TDR installed. But you can also type in specific host names, or if you've created custom groups, you can type in a group name. So if I type all, I would select all. That's the only group I have in this new account, so that's the only one that pops up. Next, we have an interesting feature that not a lot of people know about. Then the system should perform or not perform an action. Now, this can be pretty useful if you have, for example, some line of business servers that you don't want to have affected by anything that TDR is doing. You only want to alert on incidents that occur there. So you'd create a group called servers, add your host to it, and then say the system should not perform any of these actions. That can be pretty handy. And then, of course, the following actions. Do we want to kill process trees, quarantine the suspect files, and delete the registry values? In our default policies, we've selected all of these for you, and that's pretty typical. These last 2 policies are a little bit different. Let's expand those out. This is a policy type of APT Blocker. So this means that when we see a suspect file at a certain Cybercon level, we're going to start uploading those files to a sandbox to see if they're suspicious. And one interesting point when we look at these is that there's no Threat Sync score assigned to an APT Blocker policy because we dynamically determine that based on the file's parameters. And the last one is a containment policy. This allows us to isolate hosts from the network and remediate threats without allowing them to contact other hosts or spread malware throughout your network. Okay, so now we've looked at the default policies that WatchGuard provides. Let's go ahead and create a new policy. I'm going to create a new remediation policy, and I'll just call it Demo. I want this to be active at Cybercon 3, for example. That's my standard operating posture for most of my policies personally. And a threat score of, let's say, 7. So pretty suspect file, but I'm being fairly conservative. I don't want to necessarily have policies that are acting on low or medium or investigation levels, because a lot of normal stuff like Windows updates or antivirus updates can score in a very strange area here. So I'm saying 7. I'm going to apply this to all of my groups and all hosts. And I want it to kill process and quarantine file and delete registry value. Save and close it. And I've got my demo policy. It auto ranks to first. Now, what's going to happen if I have a threat on my host? The answer is nothing. Why? Because this is at Cybercon level 3 when it takes effect, and I'm still at Cybercon level 5. So what I want to do is change my Cybercon level to 3. Yes, please change it. And now that demo policy will take effect on anything that scores a 7 or higher. That will also include any 9s, 10s, anything like that. This supersedes the one that I already have saying anything that's an 8 or higher, because I'll match this one first. But I could, in fact, move this demo policy lower, and I would have my 9s and 10s, my 8s, 9s, and 10s covered. And then at Cybercon level 3, what I've basically done here is replicate the same thing as Cybercon level 2. I will have 7 through 10 remediated as well. Now I'm going to remove this policy because I don't want it anymore. Okay, one of the other things you might have seen pop up is that you can also duplicate a policy. This will just create a copy of an existing policy, and you can tweak it as needed, like, for example, changing the host group target or flipping it into not performed for a specific policy. And I don't need that, so I'm going to remove it. Okay, so now I have my default WatchGuard policies, and the standard remediation policies are enabled. I'm in Cybercon level 3, which means my policy for Cybercon 4 will take effect, as well as this rank number 2 for Cybercon 3. I do not have my containment policy active right now, but I can enable that just by clicking Enable. And there we go, it's been enabled. I can disable it by unchecking it, and there we go, it's disabled. So in my new system here, brand new instance of TDR that I've just started, I've ensured that my default policies are enabled. I've flipped myself into Cybercon level 3 so that they can take actions automatically. And I've reviewed the other policies to see if I want to enable them. I've seen how to create a new policy. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that there is a process outside of policies that can take action, and that's called Host Ransomware Prevention, or HRP. Now, HRP is a core feature of TDR that is outside of policies and does not require any network access to take actions. We configure that pretty simply. We go to Settings, Host Sensor, and it's right here, Host Ransomware Prevention Mode on host sensors. There are only 3 modes to this. Detect, which is just sort of, again, a watch mode, Off entirely, or Prevent. Now, normally you would leave this in Prevent. This is something that can be overridden at the group level, if you like, and we talk about groups in a different video demo. But for most systems, you want to leave this HRP mode on, and this will supplement your policy so that if you don't have any matching policies for a particularly malicious file, HRP will still protect you. In this video, we reviewed Cybercon, policies, actions, and talked a bit about HRP and groups. Hopefully this will help get you started with your new TDR deployment, and as always, if you need more help, please visit watchguard.com. Thank you.